This is the Rabbi Podcast.
Hello to everybody out there. This is none other than the Rabbis Podcast, right back at you. I am Rabbi Pinchas Landis of Partners in Torah of Cleveland, and I am with my famous co-host, Rabbi Gamliel Nassan Halevi Spiro of Yeshivas Abbas Torah of Cleveland. And today is a very, very, very special event for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that this is, yes, it is, I know you don't believe it, but it is the 100th episode of the Rabbis Podcast. Yes, we've been doing this for 100 episodes, and to that extent, we have a very special guest with us in the studio today. We have Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld Shlita, who has many, many accolades that follow his name. He is the Rosh Hashiva of Machon Yaakov in Eretz Yisrael. He is the Rosh Hashiva of Machon Shlomo. He is the head of Meor International. And probably, you know, I don't know if he likes to admit this too much, but he is actually somewhat related to me, or I'm related to him, because his grandchildren refer to me as Uncle Pinchas. So that is, by the way, why he has to be here, because when you're family, it's hard to say no. So nonetheless, we were able to get Rabbi Gershenfeld on the show. Rabbi Gershenfeld, we are so honored to have you here. How are you doing today?
Honored to be here, planning to have a great time. It's always great to be together with people from coast to coast, different perspectives, different ideas. And 100th episode, that means there's a good idea over here and lots of grit to get there. So we appreciate very much what you and Rav Nassan have done.
Thank you very much. And by the way, I did not necessarily say the geography of this. We are, well, Rabbi Spiro and I are only about a football field apart in our separate offices. Rabbi Gershenfeld is coming to us from Har Nof, Yerushalayim, Israel, the holy city, from his home in Eretz Yisrael. So, you know,
let's lockdown, so I'm very well protected. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you're officially in lockdown, and one of the reasons why we were very delayed in getting this episode out was the first day we were supposed to record. I was struck with I had been bit by the Wuhan bat. And I had thought that I sent an email to Rabbi Gershenfeld letting him know that I had 100 and whatever fever and I could barely move. But later on, I see all these emails of Rabbi Gershenfeld trying to get in touch with me, and I realized I never actually sent the email. So that was like our first delay, and then we had Hanukkah, and Rabbi Spiro is just getting over the coronavirus. So this has been a long time in coming for this 100th episode. But we are just going to dive right in. So, you know, Rabbi Gershenfeld, while Rabbi Spiro and myself and many of our listeners are very familiar with who you are, why don't you go ahead and give us your quick elevator speech as to who you are, where you're going, how you got to this day of being sitting in your home study in Har Nof, Israel.
Sure, great. My pleasure. Wonderful to talk to everyone. The story is I grew up in Philadelphia in a very Jewish family that wasn't connected to Torah and mitzvahs. My parents were both professors, my father in medicine, my mother in psychology. And at a very early age, obviously, I grew up interested in ideas, having such parents, having wonderful parents. And I grew up interested in, I'd seen the world around me that there were many people who were very, very wise. My friends' parents who were professors at university, they were wise, but they weren't good. And at a very early age, I think I understood that wisdom was a very important goal, but there's a special type of wisdom that would help a person lead a good life, lead a meaningful life. And in a kind of precocious way, those questions engaged me at a very, very early age. When I was quite young, 13, 14, I was asking questions and spoke with the people in Philadelphia. I started asking my questions to philosophers, started asking the head of the Reconstruction the Seminary, which is in Philadelphia. I moved on and started discussing ideas with Professor Heschel at Jewish Theological Seminary. And the ideas and the questions of understanding life and understanding to be a better person, it kept percolating in my mind. And I understood that to be a good person meant you had to be answering the big questions of life, and you had to be answering the questions that Judaism looks at. Economics helps you figure out how to apportion money. Politics helps you how to apportion power. How to lead a meaningful and good life is the area that Torah and religion involves itself in. So I kept asking questions, and eventually, after university, I got a bachelor's and master's and became a Jewish student leader as president of my Hillel. I was invited and met with Golda Meir talking about the future of Judaism. We can go through the stories if you want, but the question came, okay, I have to take off time before law school at that point to study. I came to Israel to study, and 50 years later, I'm still studying, trying to study a little deeper, trying to study a little more meaningfully, studying a little more passionately. And as I've gone through that process of asking questions for myself, I found that the world is asking those type of questions. And therefore, when I came in to start learning Torah, there wasn't the institution that was appropriate for me at that point. So my attempt to build Machon Shlomo has been to build an institution that would be able to engage and ask the questions that broad 21st century students ask in the Western world, and how the Torah answers them with sophistication and relevance. That spun over, and thank God we had more students we could handle. We started the second institution, Machon Yaakov. Without the long story, we then started Meor on 20 campuses throughout America to try and share this literacy and love for learning and living Jewishly.
What you're saying is very compelling. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about myself recently. We have a yeshiva. I deal with Bachram, I deal with a lot of Balabatim. And I think I'm not sure what your age is, but I think when you started questioning, that's what I consider to be the golden age of questioning in America, in a good way. I mean, coming out of the 60s, a lot of people had questions. People were wondering why. I think why is always a great question, right? All the riskers notwithstanding, but we all know that why is one of the most important questions in the world. And he saw a certain energy that was happening in the Bria, some ways used negatively, some ways used positively, but really built on the idea of why, and it was such a positive time. But nowadays, I feel the opposite, right? I feel that even we in the frum world, people who are FFB, I've heard from Rabbi Bowman, he said that he had heard him speak of the advantage of Bali Tshuva, of seeing things fresh and having the question. I've heard from Rabbi Shapiro that, the disadvantage of those who were born from, but I think especially nowadays, the disadvantage of both from people, FFB, and not from people, just the general lack of questioning and the direction we're going in a world that doesn't have so many questions, and a world that is so superficial. Are you still seeing, how? I guess I'm asking, how is Machon Yaakov doing? How's Machon Shlomo doing? Are you still getting a big clientele of people who want to know why? Because I know here in the frum world, this is something, with all the great things happening in the frum world, the question why is lacking, and it's sorely lacking in our community. Are you seeing that in your yeshivas also?
Very much so, and very much so through Meor. The question always, Rav Nassan, is, as you said, the essence of the way God made human beings is he made us wanting to find order. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that vision of unity is templated, imprinted in the heart and soul of a human being. As Viktor Frankl says, there's a search for meaning, a search for understanding. And it's an educator's mission to find why is going to interest what students. So just as an example of what Rav Nassan's saying is, I'll have students over. And it used to be that if I'd ask them, okay, and we send them out to different people's houses for Shabbos, and then they'll all come together at my house afterwards. And I'll ask the students, what do you want to talk about? Should we talk about proofs of God? Should we talk about why there was a Holocaust? Should we talk about the state of Israel and Zionism? Should we talk about the unusual minhagim that you saw tonight at the different people's houses? My rough poll is about 80% of the students say, we want to understand the minhagim at the houses. So the generation's vision is a more focused and concrete one, but they want to know why. Why are we doing Jewish action? The first question they ask is not the question perhaps they asked 30 years ago, is was there a big bang or was there a big crash or was there a big design? But human beings are made to inquire, to grow, and to develop. Our job as educators is, okay, as you're saying, what engages your mind? And try and help show them that question about why we have two challahs on the Shabbos table, which, as you're saying, unfortunately, most religious people haven't thought about, is profound and provocative. And wow, I want to learn more. And by asking the why of why two challahs, that looks very prosaic, that looks very mundane. But when you give an answer that's powerful and mind expanding, guess what? Everybody wants to ask a second why and a third why and a fourth why. So the job of educators is always take the why the student has, give them a dynamic and relevant answer, and now guess what? They're going to want to come back, and you can't stop them from asking questions. If it's just like when your child stops asking questions, it means you were too bored to engage them. Otherwise, the child will keep asking. If you don't have people asking you questions and staying around, then clearly you did something wrong in the responses you had. And a little bit the problem is that we have to train educators who have that ability to know what the lurking why is and know what the why is that they're searching for. And then we have engaging, vibrant conversations, and we're moving, and we have our Meor programs that change, and we have the dynamic ideas change. So yes, the question changed, but the why is always there. And man's search for meaning is a foundation of Judaism and a foundation of life and a foundation of man. And therefore, we know two things. I don't want to make jokes in this time, but there's people are always going to have to pay taxes, and people are always going to have a funeral home, and people are always going to have a rabbi to explain to them what's the meaning in their life. So I don't feel early retirement is going to happen to me. And Reb Pinchas, you're a couple of generations younger than me. This is your 100th episode. With God's help, it'll be 1,000th episode, and you'll still have lots of questions to help people respond to and understand. Just keep the energy up.
Amen. And I am the youngest one here on this episode. Rabbi Spear is a few days older than me, and I'm also the only one not from Philadelphia. Which hey, I guess that's a good thing, but I don't know about that. But along those lines, there's something that's really bothered me on this subject, and Rabbi Spear and I have touched on it a little bit in previous episodes. But along those lines with answering questions, and I guess this would be a specific question to you as to how you train your educators on campus in those 20 more campuses. But really, I think in a holistic, in a bigger way, how we approach this when people ask us questions, and that is apologetics. I think we all look at good old Philo as the Macharesh of the apologetic, and ever since then, it's sort of been a Jewish trend to do that. And I know that always irks me the wrong way. And when I get questions from wherever, no matter how hard they are, I try never to edge into apologetics. My favorite example of this is when you get a question about slavery. The most intellectually dishonest way to answer that is to say, what do you mean? Look at the Torah. We have all this protection for the slaves, and we have to give them our pillow and our food and feed, going all these things. But you never say, oh, well, there's an Eved Knaini and Eved Ivri. So there's a Jewish slave and a non-Jewish slave. So therefore, you're not really talking about the
subject. I just want to interrupt. Even I realize, the Meiri does say, if you look at the Meiri, he is very, he does compare. He speaks about the really, Meir did he really should do it for the Eved Knaini as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, along these lines, someone asked me, again, you're right. And I've had that debate numerous times. We've had that debate. My wife and I have had that debate. But, there's a difference. There's a difference between Eved Knaini and Eved Ivri. Along these lines, the Torah approach to men and women, the difference between men and women, I think that many people involved in Kiruv sort of oversell certain aspects of Divrei Machshava, of Agadita, to say, oh, well, really, women are greater. They're greater. No, no, it's not. It's different roles, very different roles. Not better, worse, greater, less. Don't go down that path. Different. And I know this is something that has been bothering me. So how do you deal with this? Number one, with your educators, and number two, just in practically with the hundreds of thousands that you have been involved with. This idea of the hard questions, apologetics, the desire to kind of sugarcoat, and as opposed to not sugarcoat.
The mission when answering questions is to help the person. The answer I'm trying to give is a question that helps the person and moves them along. So usually what we train the educators, I try and train myself at, is to know the real profound, deep answer that we're looking for. And work to figure out how to bring that down to where the student is. And that's not apologetics. That's the beauty of taking a profound idea and being a great educator and doing tzimtzum, making it smaller so it can be used for the student, and the student will begin to hear there's something deeper. When I was starting Machon Shlomo, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach told me that I should take the 6 months off and I should go to the Gedolei Torah in the world and ask them, what's the one thing that I should build the yeshiva on? What's the one foundation? What's the yesod? So, of course, Reb Shlomo Zalman told me, so of course that's what I did. So I went to Rev Volba and I asked Rev Volba, what's the one thing I should establish myself for? He says, very good. He says, when I started Be'er Yaakov, I did the same thing. And I went to Reb Dessler. And Reb Dessler told me that before he would tell me what the one idea was I should build Be'er Yaakov on, I should come and hear a half-hour Musar Shmuz of his. So I hope I say this over properly, exactly where Rav Volba said it. Rav Volba said he went, and it was a shir, the 17-year-old Bachram, who was after World War II. They weren't on the highest level. Rav Dessler was the tzaddik and Gaon Ador. And Rav Volba said he wasn't so impressed. Afterwards, he met Rav Dessler and said, how long do you think it took me to prepare that shir, that vad? So really, Rav Volba told me he thought it took an hour. But he wanted to be nice to Rav Dessler. He said, 3 hours. So Rav Dessler said, no, I'm not such a gadol. I no. He says, that shir took 9 hours. It took 3 hours to learn the sugi up, 3 hours to organize it clearly in my mind, and then 3 hours to make metaphors and mashalim to help the students understand it. And if you want to be successful at teaching, Reb Shlomo, talking to Reb Volba, this is what you'll have to do also. So I think it's clearly, Reb Pinchas, that's the answer to your question. Mm-hmm. And the answer is that educators have to figure out what the key questions. We can't do this for everything. An educator is like the Chafetz Chaim said. The Chafetz Chaim writes in a letter that I spent my life working on halacha, and therefore I'm an Amma Aretz in Kabbalah and Zohar, because you have to specialize in certain areas. An educator has to focus on what's truly important to his students in the generation, work on those ideas, understand them profoundly, develop metaphors that will connect them, ways of breaking it down and giving it over. And then we're not doing apologetics, we're doing real education. There's so little real education. There's so few people who spend 3 hours really learning up the hashkafa. And then there's so few people who after that try to break it down and get it clear. And then to sit down and be a good educator, it's very hard. The reason we lack great educators is because it's so hard. It's a 9-hour process. To Reb Dessler, to go in the door, a gadol who grew up in Kelm, was a genius, was an Eloi. To do it for him was 9 hours. For us, it's 9 hours. Now, that's all the very nice answer to make you happy. But just in case anyone here is really an educator, there's got to be a left hand sometimes also, that sometimes I think we need apologetics, because sometimes the answers are profound and deep. And if a person's asking you a deep question and doesn't want to think about it deeply, then there's no reason to confuse him with a deep answer that he's not willing to think his way through. And then we have the ideas in Chazal of docha bekash, you push him away with straw. And there is such an idea also, which we have to use so we can get people to focus on the really important questions at the proper time and the proper level. So life is complicated. But of course, the simple answer is we have to learn the ideas up profoundly. We have to focus on what people are asking and know what's the engaging ideas of our society right now. We have to break it down in ways that they relate. The lashon of mashal, the power of a mashal, the power of a story, is the way the Torah speaks. Torah speaks in Sipurim. Torah speaks in Mashalim. Oftentimes, people who become deep don't have that ability to make connections downstairs. Rav Moshe Shapiro, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, always told me that Rav Dessler taught him that you have to work and understand the idea deeply and profoundly. And then afterwards, you have to spend much of your energy building ladders and tunnels to connect the upper level worlds and the lower level worlds. That's what good educators try and do.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Rabbi Spiro, I don't want to hog the questionings over here. You want to throw out the next question for Rabbi Gershenfeld?
So on that similar note, to a certain extent, we're seeing it. When I was a bacher in yeshiva, there was never, I don't think I ever heard a Maharal quoted. I don't think I ever heard Nefesh Chaim quoted. We learned Nefesh Chaim, we learned Shar Dalet. That was always acceptable to learn. But actually, I learned Nefesh Chaim with Shalom Kamenetsky when I was older. But I mean, when I learned those ideas, especially in particular Shar Aleph, it was like the whole new world. Like the world hadn't existed till then. So my question is, now Baruch Hashem, we are seeing a lot more. I wouldn't quite call Teres Hanister, but whatever you want to call it, Teres HaMaharal, and more Torah of the Gaon, and then Chaim Volozhiner. And I know what Rav Shalom is saying. Rav Shalom sends me a lot of his Divrei Torah that he sends out. And the way he's opening up a lot of big ideas, the way Rav Moshe Shapiro opened up big ideas. But do you think it's sufficient, or do you think the firm world still is in need of? I'll give you an example. I guess when I was younger, I was learning in Meor in Eretz Yisrael, and in the summer, our Sameach had a program called the JLE. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Rabbi Gottlieb would give shiurim, Rabbi Tatz would give shiurim. It was at night. And a ton of younger light used to come to the base matters during night Seder just to hear Rabbi Tatz and to hear Rabbi Gottlieb and to hear Rabbi Orlowski. And it was amazing. I went myself. I went with a bunch of my friends, and we really, really enjoyed it. Do you think there needs to be some sort of formal program, or if not formal, some sort of just program out there that people who are yeshivas of B'nai Torah and people raised from birth are able to connect to this part? I think there's a lot of frum people out there who have weaknesses in their emunah. I was once in a shir, we were once sitting there with Rabbi Tatz. So Rabbi Tatz asked the room, he asked the younger light in the room, I still remember where we were sitting in a side room with our Sameach in the summer. He says, anyone know the difference between emunah and bitachon? That's what Rabbi Tatz asked us. These were all the younger light in the room were guys learning either a Meor or Bris, and no one could answer him. One guy said, emunah means when you believe, and bitachon means when you mamish believe. That's what one of the guys answered. So Rabbi Tatz said in his inimitable South African way, he said, you just said nothing. The guy was like, no, I'm saying emunah. Rabbi Tatz like, he didn't say anything. So my question is, do we need to have a formal curriculum? Could we push something? I mean, you can't get anyone in the film world to be on the same page about anything, but can there be some sort of baseline curriculum where we are like, they give out to kids and believe he is flawless, like a lot of schools have. I know Hebrew Academy has it. Take the basics, who are the Nevi'im, what are the Sefer Nevi'im, who are Nevi'im Rishonim, who are Nevi'im Achrayim, tell us the basic Torah of Jewish history. Have some form of baseline machshava that every Yid should know, should be familiar with, at least an inkling of understanding. Why am I putting on tefillin in the morning? What does Shema Yisrael really mean? Why am I making Kiddush Friday? Why do I have Lechem Mishnah? Those questions that we spoke about, that you mentioned before. To bring these ideas, to make them commonplace in our community, spoken about, just like they have Hilchah Shabbos initiatives, which are obviously very important, to have these type of typical Machshavas Yisrael initiatives.
To me, I understand what you're saying. And of course, my life is greatly enhanced and my connection with Emunah is greatly developed by having these tools. But one of the things I'm very open to, and I think I've experienced, is there's many different drachim for different people. The idea of instituting one policy is something I think the Gedolim have never been in favor of. And when you have a Rav Dessler, Rav Dessler illuminated the world in a certain way. You had a Rav Hutner, he illuminated the world in a certain way.
After Rav Dessler gave his first shmuz in Panovich, the Bachrim, there were people who were upset. I'm sure you know that story. He spoke about with Parshas Bereishis, how Rav Tzadok understood the Chet Veitzadas, and there were people who were outsiders were there, and some Bachrim, very few Bachrim Panovich then, they were very angry. And they complained to Rav Chatzkel Levenstein. It was a whole big to-do about it.
Yeah, we can have long conversations about it, right? I think I know it quite well. I've spent time talking with both Rav Moshe Shapiro and Rav Shach about it, and Rav Schwab about it. But I don't want to do history. I'm not sure that usually stories are told over in certain ways. But to institute something is not the way we go. The worst thing in the world is to have people teaching over ideas they don't really understand, they don't really grapple with. And what I've learned from my Rabbis is, as the Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, as the Alter Slobodka, the mission is you make yourself what you are. If people are interested in growing, they will grow. If everyone finds that there's a desire at Simaon for it, then there'll be more and more people coming. And some people are going to work with the Chazon Ish. That's going to work for a halachic derech, and some people are going to work with Chasidus, and some people work with Makshava, some people with Musar. The vision of Klal Yisrael is the old vision of, we don't want to connect ourselves to one light shaft. When it goes, all the lights are going to go off. The mission is for people to give offerings. Rav Moshe Shapiro would give a class. Rav Volbe had a base on Musar. We have to open up and let people who want to have you had the experience in Or Sameach, right, to go to these Jalil. That's what we have to offer and do. And yes, I think there has to be more of them. We have to give people a chance to get it. Institution and organizing and making curriculum, that's really not the way I think we should go, though.
So along those lines, I want to put the Rosh Yeshiva's tail to the fire a little bit. In the Machons, and I'm sure either Machon is different, and probably a couple episodes we'd have to define and explain and get into the difference between Machon Yaakov and Machon Shlomo. But in the Machons in general, do you tend to follow I would say, traditional yeshiva, literature yeshiva curriculum, or have you implemented more of an expansive curriculum with nach and machshava and halacha and not just expecting everything, not to belittle it, but not just expecting everything to come out of the learning of Gemara?
Yes, we've definitely, our vision is that we realize that the students need a foundation, and the foundation is, what's our goal? Our goal is to make, as the Ramchal says, as the Alter Slobodka says all around, to make an Nashim Shleim, an Adam Shalom. To make an Adam Shalom, we have to offer a broad curriculum. Now, we don't offer so broad. I find too broad means you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. What I've learned from my Rabbis is that you should become a master of a few trades, and that's going to make your life powerful and special. And as we know, again, from the morale, from Rabbi Dessler, from the Alter Slobodka, that the Bina, the depth of understanding something, is what we're searching for clearly. The difference we have is, first of all, there's a structure and emphasis on learning Parsha Shavua Chumash. Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to us in terms of Chumash. To be a Jew, you're going to read the Parsha every week. If you're bored by Torah, if you're bored by Kriyas Torah, how can you be a good Jew? I mean, you're going to have an Emunah problem every time you go into shul. So we're trying to teach a profundity of understanding Chumash, and on top of that profundity, to see the profound depth of Rashi. I personally feel the Gur Aryeh does that beautifully. The Gur Aryeh teaches you to appreciate a Rishon, appreciate the exactitude of his language, the depth of his thought, the relevance of his thought. So we spend time very much working on developing a vision of Chumash and seeing that vision of the world. Second, we work on the three women that, according to Gemara and Kedushin, create a good Jew's life. The Gemara over there asks the question of Do you have to do you have to teach your son umnus? So the Gemara says there's three women in a person's life. There's a wife, she's one type of completion to a person. There's making a living, it's a second type of parnasa for a person, of a wife for a person. And there's learning Torah. And we do vadim on, okay, how are we going to achieve this? How is working going to make you a more successful person? How is a wife? What's the laboratory you have to work on? So we have Musar Vadim on very practical, expressive aspects that are going to engage the person's life and take all of Torah and apply it to those areas, which will be relevant and profound for the person, that when he goes out to life, he's going to be prepared for that and what we're going on. I think those are the two major additions we have to a regular curriculum. Maybe the third addition is that the Bekiah Seder in the yeshiva is in Gemara Brachos. Reb Ruderman always told me that Brachos, the Alter Slobodka told Reb Ruderman that Brachos, there's a reason Reb Yehuda Nasi made Brachos the first Masechta in Shas, that Brachos LaRosh Tzaddik, he said, the Alter said, that Brachos create the head of a tzaddik. It gives you an ability to think about God when you daven, when you say Kriya Shema, when you make brachos. So brachos creates a practical vision of how to connect with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the Bekias program that we try to get the Talmidim through most of brachos in the 2 years they're at the yeshiva. So they have a profound way of knowing 1/3 of Orach Chaim and connecting to it. And then we learn the regular yeshiva, and we learn the regular yeshivish masechtas. I might not learn the regular yeshivish masechtas if I lived in a isolated laboratory. I might learn Shabbos and learn the malachas. I always think about doing that, and I don't do it. Because at the end, we want the Talmidim to connect to the world of yeshivas. There's only one olam yeshivas. It's the vision and the energy that we all have to connect to, and therefore we steiget nashim nezikin as every yeshiva does, so that when the bachrim decide to stay longer or will learn with their children, they'll know nashim and nezikin.
I want to tell you, Rabbi Gershenfeld, we did for 1 year. We did Klal Gadol on Shabbos, and we had a tremendous amount of atzlacha with it. We found it was really amazing. A lot of our guys started off with regular yeshivas, and were not so successful. And yeah, what we found, we did Klal Gadol, was mamish amazing for the guys.
Yeah, educationally, I'm sure it's the right thing, but because I'm trying to make sure that the students can connect to the Olam Yeshivas, I don't do that. I don't want to be too radical. That's what everything is this balance to make sure that we know that we're a bridge, that we have to connect to a person who asks different questions. Like, there's always a joke at every Machon, every other year, the Machon Purim play. Someone, has to think that they invented the joke that, dear mom, I'm in Jerusalem. I've answered the world's question that always bothered me. I couldn't go to sleep. Shnai mochsen betalis yachloku b'shavua. So, that's not exactly what's usually motivating them to come to yeshiva, but obviously there's depth and a beauty. We have to show them that also.
And I have to say, I love the idea of brachos. I'm personally learning brachos right now with my chavrusa, and I think it's either my 6th or 7th time through it. I'm sure Rashiva's been through it countless times, Rabbi Spiro as well. But it's amazing that I feel like every day it's like, oh, this is like brand new. There's just so much, and I mean, like every page of Gemara, but especially brachos with the back and forth between the Gadatz and Halacha and like the Rosh Yeshiva davening brachos, Ketzim Mavarchim, but back to the Gadatz and Rabbi Kiva, it is a mile a minute, and every page is like I've never seen it before. So I love that idea.
If you ever want to ask a really stupid question, it happened once by Purim, I was by Rev Volba, and Rev Volba was more open. He wanted to be engaging on Purim, so somebody asked him, "What's the stupidest question you ever asked, Rebbe?" So he said the stupidest question he ever asked was, he went to Reb Chatzkel, and he was very proud of himself that he'd finished learning Mesilas Yesharim the 50th time. And he was trying to coax Reb Chatzkel into telling him what deep sefer the Ramchali should learn. Should he learn Klach Pischei Chachma? Should he learn Adir B'Marom? What should he do? So he went to Reb Chatzkel and he said, Reb Chatzkel, I get a mazel tov. I finished Mesilas Yesharim the 50th time. What should I learn now? Rav Volba said the minute the words were out of his mouth, he knew it was a stupid question. But Rav Chatzkel looked at him and said, do you understand it yet? He said, no. He says, well, maybe you should learn it the 51st.
That's beautiful.
I think it's an interesting contrast what you're saying regarding our understanding of Messiah. Meaning, like, I understand you're saying that I remember when I was in Ar Sameach, I was never there I used to learn with a few guys at Night Seder there. I used to give like a small impromptu share. So a lot of what I heard in Ar Sameach was the idea of we have to integrate these guys, and they have to have the right Messiah, and they have to understand ideas in Bava Kama and Nosh Mazik and those types of things. And I do agree with that. It's obviously important idea of Messiah. But on the other hand, I do question sometimes in our system. This is something I've spoken about a lot with Avshalom Kamenetsky. I'll quote him again. Is there are many people who are in our system. The Messiah is not working for them 100%, and more than that, I just read Avihai Yeshivas. I've read a couple times, and I read it again recently about Chaim Volozhiner. It's fascinating. In Volozhin, they did not learn Yeshiva Shemus Heftas. Right? In Volozhin, they learned through Shas, straight. They started in Brachas, they finished with Nida, and they started Brachas again. In Volozhin, they used to have every day after davening a 15-minute Chumash year. Right? The Ha'emek Davar and Pek Hadash from Itzla, both those are the Shurim said in Volozhin. And it's such a radically way. Now, if you would at any good yeshiva, if you would say 15-minute shir after Shachris on Chumash, the Bachram would laugh their heads off. Right? Such an idea would seem so bizarre. So it's just, I know there's no answer to the question.
I'll add that I think you stop the average yeshiva mind and ask them, like, who was your yeshiva curriculum modeled after? They'll say, oh, Volozhin for sure. And it's, very different, as you're pointing out.
Right. So always the question is, and I'm sure you've thought about this a lot more than I have, regarding the type of yeshiva you have, to what degree are we wedded to Messiah, and to what degree is part of the Messiah that Klal Yisrael always changes? We see it in Psak. Every major Paisik, Rabbi Yashiv, Rabbi Moshe, the Chazon Ish, Chaim Meiser, all had many, many radical psakim, which they were machadish on their own, and which there was no precedent for. But Tzachal Inspector, throughout the Dairis, I think it's always been like that. People had tainas in Rabbi Moshe, unbelievable tainas in Rabbi Moshe, some Rabbanim, but some of the Hungarian Rabbanim, they saw Igros Moshe and they could not believe it, the Chidushim Rabbi Moshe was writing. I think it's true of everybody. The Chazon Ish, the same thing. It's always true. So it's just, I don't know. There's no specific answer. It's something. In today's world, where the Chavetz Chaim used to give the mashal of when there's a fire, use any type of water to put the fire out. I wonder to what degree we have an achrayas to be wedded to Messiah, or is fakir, the Messiah is to do what works.
I would make my pronouncement different from those two. I can explain why I'm worried about both of those. I would think that the approach that I would suggest is the one that Revolba suggests in Ali Shor. I happened to just look it up for somebody in Daf Kuf Mem Beis, where he says that the essence of Torah, as you said, is to change. We have to change with the times. Anyone who looked, he says, Revolba said, anyone who looks at Reb Yisrael Salanter, his sefer was called Musar. The Alter Mikelm changed it. The Musar didn't work. The lave wasn't closed. His generation, he called it Chachmo Musar. He started quoting secular wise men, Aristotle, Socrates. He called it Chachmo Musar. Rev Ruchem, the Chachmo Musar didn't work. He needed to add in the morale. He needed to add in the depth because the heart was closed and the secular wisdom wasn't open. He called it Das Chachmo Musar. Whatever we're going to call the next level, Rev Dessler is going to be, he didn't name it that, but it's going to be Chachmas HaNister, maybe Chachmas HaKabbalah, Chachmas HaChasidus, Das Chachmo Musar. Revolba says that we have to machadish every generation. We have to relate to our students. But we have to do that only after we've mishamash and rav and know what the Masorah is. Each of these people, the greatest Talmud of the Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was the Alter Mikelm. The greatest Talmud of the Alter Mikelm was Rev Yerucham. The greatest Talmud of Beit Kelm was Rev Dessler. You have to first know, you have to master the Masorah. And then you're allowed to sit down and add on and machadish what your generation needs. But to think that someone from outside the Masorah can come in, or that you just should keep the Masorah as it's frozen, that's wrong. Rav Ruderman is remarked to have said that there was a great person who he said once, He speaks like the altar and he looks like the altar, he uses the same vocabulary as the altar. He's only missing the ikr of the altar. So of course I asked what that was, and he says, the altar is chiddush, the altar is creativity. And that's why when the altar spoke, 300 people came to listen to the altar, Slabatka. And when this person comes to speak, 20 people who may not think as much as they should come to talk about it. So there's clearly, all my rabbis understand that the job is to understand the Mesorah, become part of the Mesorah, engage with the Mesorah. And then once you've done that, then stage 2 becomes, okay, now how do I connect the two next to each other? Maybe I'll just to show how essential what Rev Nassan's saying is, can I avort? It's awesomely beautiful, but it's essential. It's just, it starts, and it's a question that bothers me for 35 years. And in the Svarim Kedoshim, they just published a couple of years ago this question up for the first time with the answer. What's the Aleph base? Aleph base. We start with the Aleph base. The Kodesh Baruch Hu made the world. The Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Dal explains that every letter is a symbol for its idea. Aleph stands for to learn, and Beis stands for Bina. You have to learn deeply. You have to learn Bina. We don't learn superficially. You have to learn deeply. Aleph Beis. That's the Aleph Beis. The Aleph Beis. That's what we start from. That's what a Jewish life begins with. But Rashi, right there in the Gemara, is concerned and says, "What's the word Aleph mean?" Aleph doesn't mean anything in Lashon HaKodesh as a verb. Aleph means to learn in Targum, in Aramaic. So why does Lashon HaKodesh begin with Aleph, which speaks in Targum, which speaks in Aramaic? The question always bothered me. And obviously, so Rashi says there, Aleph means Lomed. Lomed Bini translates the word for us, but why is it? But I saw in Sforim HaKadoshim, this Chashav Sefer, which I'll tell you afterwards if you want, but I'm not going to do it for the whole Olam here. But it says that that's the essence of the beginning of Torah. The essence of the beginning of Torah is that we have to metargim, we have to speak the language of people and then bring them into Bina. Aleph is all education. The beginning of everything is realizing where you are right now is we're not connected, we're not Kodesh. He says an Av is an Aleph Beis. An Av's mission is to take a child before he has Das and to train him to have Das from 0 to 13. The beginning is this Targum ability, this ability to figure out where the world is and connect to it and bring it to Bina, bring it to a Torah Bina. And that's the Aleph Beis of everything, Reb Nassan. That's what we're trying to search for and go for all of us in our different ways. But the essence of education is to recognize that the first step of the Aleph Beis, the first step of life is to figure out where the world is, what people are talking about, what bothers and concerns people, and then bring that to Bina, and then we can keep going and growing. That's what I think we're trying to talk our way around over here.
Beautiful, beautiful. Rabbi Gershenfeld, we've already kept you a lot longer than I promised we were going to keep you for, but I want to make sure, and I know and some of our emails back and forth in preparing for this, we sort of hinted to this, but we want to find out where you're going. And we know that you built two amazing institutions that have turned out amazing, hundreds of Talmidim with the Meor programs, and your influence is everywhere in the Jewish world right now. The Kiruv world, but where are you going? What's next? What are the big projects? I know we're all in this, still in this. You're officially in a lockdown. We're sort of still in a lockdown over here, but we're all trying to reinvent ourselves in the new world order. But give us the rapid fire answer to that question of where Rabbi Gershenfeld and where Meor, Machon's, where it's all going.
I think the projects that are popping up on my horizon are, I keep asking for my kids, like, okay, kids, take over the yeshivas. Let me go do something new right now because what I'm doing is powerful enough and important enough that I want to keep doing it. But I believe that the idea that Rav Nassan spoke about at the beginning is that I don't think we have enough trained educators being trained by educators. There's got to be Machon who are learning Torah deeply and who are learning Torah not to be Magidei Shurim, but learning Torah to help be activists to change the world. if you look at the way Reb David Leibowitz described the yeshiva, the kollel in Slobodka, the kollel in Slobodka was not, he says, it was not to produce Rosh Yeshivas, it was not to produce Maggid Yishurim. It was to produce people who would go out and help change Klal Yisrael and build a better Klal Yisrael. I feel that aspect of serving the tzibur and activist Torah is lacking. I find people are activists but don't have the deep ideas. They have the deep ideas, but they don't have it with metaphors to bring out. I'd like to try and put together something, I think, that helps produce people who can be Torah activists, profound educators, idealistic builders, and see that the goal of life is to be a mashpia, to be a malamed. As Rav Moshe Shapiro always said, as the Rambam says, the chiyuv of Talmud Torah, according to the Rambam, comes from pasuk v'shinantam levanecha. The chiyuv is to be a teacher. Just learning Shar Dalet of Nefesh Chaim is not the chiyuv that we're looking for. The chiyuv is you have to be v'shinantam, you have to be teaching levanecha. Rambam says in Sefer HaMitzvahs that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is lo model olame v'zehu hanikra Talmud Torah. Rav Shapiro would often say, if you're just learning and you don't have a desire, a she'ifa to train yourself to be malamed, then just like you don't put on tefillin when you say v'shinantam, you're not yotzi your Kriya Shema, maybe you're not yotzi Kriya Shema, and maybe not yotzi the mitzvah of Talmud Torah keneged kulam. So I believe that the aspect of being trained, mashpiyim, caring for the tzibur, is something that I was zocheh to have by having special parents and having special Rabbis. That's one of the ideas I think that I'd like to try and develop. If Kodesh Baruch gives me the strength and the insights. And I have lots of other ideas, but I think that's the major one right now that we're thinking about. We'll see what comes up.
That was great. And the way you said that was really great. You know, the Maharal says, I'm sure you know this, that one of the mitzvahs of the Seder, of the Gadat Levincha, is really a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. A lot of Mefarshim use that to answer the question, why is there no bracha on the mitzvah of Haggadah? So they quote that Maharal and say, because really it's Talmud Torah. So meaning the essence of our giving over our Messiah, right, which happens Leil Seder every year, that really is a mitzvah built on the very simple Vishnat Levanach, the idea of Talmud Torah, which is, right, you said so beautifully. Wow, great.
And I'm going to throw out one last question for Rabbi Gershenfeld before we let him go, and because I know it's getting late over there in Yerushalayim. But if Rabbi Gershenfeld could take out a gigantic billboard and put it in Yerushalayim and New York and Cleveland and Philadelphia, put it all over the world, what would this gigantic billboard say?
I guess maybe I'd take two options. One is something like, I'd find a more elegant way to say it, but if I get the billboard, not one of the things I think about usually, but I would say something like, a meaningful life is created by majoring in areas of major importance, not by majoring in areas of minor importance. I think it's the major goal of Judaism, that we have to major in the major questions of life. Too many people are caught up in details and missing the big question. So I do something like that major in areas of major importance, don't major in areas of minor importance. I'd find a way to craft that hopefully a little more eloquently. And the second one is there's always a quote from John Albee that moved me and helped me when I was growing with Torah. Because the battle is between yeshiva and university, and of course we have to do both. But John Albee was standing by and he saw that in the 1850s there was a debate between Emerson and Thoreau, the two great philosophers, about whether one should go to Harvard or whether one should go to Walden. And at the end, they're battling back and forth, and Emerson tells Thoreau, come to Harvard, you have to come to Harvard. Harvard, you learn all branches of knowledge. Harvard, you learn botany, biology, classics, physics, astronomy. And Thoreau responded, as a good Jew would respond, that's right. At Harvard, you can learn all the branches of knowledge, and branches are very valuable. But branches without roots, they die.
Wow.
You have to work on the roots of knowledge first, and then all the branches become classically valuable. So I put up some kind of billboard saying, let's work on the roots of knowledge together, and then we'll be able to develop branches afterwards. And I really think that's the mission statement of being a good Jew.
Yeah, I think the Ramchal says it before Derech Hashem when he uses the mashal of roots and branches to describe Klal Yisrael's place in the world. That the Zman of Shirashim versus the Zman of Nothing. That's I think it's very along those lines of why he chooses that to describe what we're doing here. So Rabbi Gershenfeld, we want to thank you tremendously. You gave us about twice the amount of time as we asked you for originally, and we hope that maybe we can get you back on here at some future time. But it's been a true pleasure, and your influence is touching us all every day. I mean, I'll give you a story that happened to me here in Cleveland last week. If you remember the name Costa Feldman went to Moodus in, I don't know, 1996 or something like that. So Moodus is, it's not called Moodus anymore, whatever it's called now, but Moodus is one of the programs that Rabbi Gershenfeld runs in the summer here in America. And Costa went from Case Western Reserve University to Moodus. And it was in that perfectly structured program that you have over there where every college kid gets a mentor for 2 weeks. And he said, just in those 2 weeks, it all clicked. And he decided to become a Shomer Torah mitzvahs. He was just sitting Shiva for his father. He's now has the Elmid and our minion at the Kollel over here, learns in the Kollel every night, raised a family of B'nai Torah. And again, you don't even know who he is. I mean, I don't want to say you don't know who he is, but he was at one of your programs for 2 weeks, and it literally changed his life. And like, how many hundreds of thousands are there out there from the 2 week program, from the interfacing at Meor on campus, from Machon Shlomo, from Machon Yaakov, and it's just been such an honor. I know for me, and I assume I'm speaking for Rabbi Spiro as well, to have you here and to just to be able to glean some of your insights into the world, the Jewish world, the world of education. And I hope that we can do this again, hopefully sometime soon.
1,000 comes, you've got me. Your 1,000th episode, we're there. But like Gershenfelds have to get the last word in, Rav Pinchas, even though it's your show, just to perhaps sharpen up your metaphor, which I think is very beautiful and right. I, at one point, was trying to figure out whether I should go back to law school or whether I should try and become a Torah educator. And a certain Torah authority told me that I should go back. I'm much too perfectionistic. I'm much too intellectual. I'm going to get burned out by students. So it happened that I went to Reb Freifeld, and I kind of unleashed my guts to him. And he turned to me with a metaphor that's always inspired me. I hope it inspires you, Reb Pinchas, and all of your listeners, which is just the way to make a better world. He said, Beryl, there's only two types of people in the world. When you're sitting by a pond and you see the beautiful, placid pond, so you got a pebble in your hand. There's only two types of people. You got to throw the pebble. Some people throw the pebble in and watch it hit the bottom. Those people can get burnt out because lots of times you'll try to make the world better. You don't succeed. It doesn't work right then. It doesn't work at the moment. Other people throw the stone in the water and they train themselves to watch the concentric circles of energy waves spread out across the pond. And that means you know that if you did the right thing, you put good energy in the world. And that's never going to go away. The greatness of being a Torah educator, the greatness of being a good person every day in every way we know, our mission is to throw pebbles in the water, doing the right thing. And lots of times we're not going to know about whether it worked or not, but we have to believe in Torah physics, we have to believe in Einsteinian physics, that energy put in never dissipates, it just spans out. Hopefully if we do that together, then the energy you put into these 100 episodes, the energy we shared tonight, the energy of Torah, will help make a better world, and we'll have that idealism to know that whatever we do is creating good energy that's going to make what we want to do better and more beautiful. Thank you. Blessings. And we should be together for your 1,000th episode.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Gershenfeld. Have a great evening, and please give my nieces and nephews hugs and kisses when you see it. I don't know if you can give hugs and kisses now in Israel, social distancing, but at least wave at them and tell them their Uncle Pen loves them. And I my daughter's over there and is there in Shlomo Marina's apartment all the time, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you've built. It's amazing what you built for your family and the institutions, and we are all living in awe. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you at episode 1000. Hopefully it should be soon.
Amen.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Great evening. Thank you.